happening, everybody? Merry New Year. Happy holidays. It's 2022. Coming in hot. All right, so hope everybody had a safe, happy New Year's Eve. Hopefully your hangover is not keeping you underneath a bunch of covers. Been there. Sleeping in the bathroom. Anyway, getting back to it. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope everybody had a fantastic New Year. Everybody's safe. Wanted to talk a little bit about direct connection tonight and give you guys a little bit of history and a little bit of what we're hoping for direct connection. Now, I am going to say that this is going to be kind of a wish list, a lot of wishful thinking on my part, but I want you guys to know where direct connection came from. I want you guys to know what significance direct connection had and why the name and the branding of direct connection is so vitally important, not only to Mopar performance, but just to general street guy, street racer, performance enthusiast, how important it is to those guys too. So let me check in with you guys real quickly, and then I will get into the first part of this. I want to say hello to everybody that made it in quick. Lee, Steven was first in, saying, B, what's up? What's up, Steven? Eric saying, good evening, Professor Mason. Boom, got the flex, I like it. Michael Corleone is in, flexing tough, saying Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, buddy. Gary's saying hello, and Eric is saying Happy New Year. All right, guys, so I'm going to dive right into it for you early birds. This is something that I am really looking forward to. Now, what I have in my hands here is basically the beginnings of direct connection. This is from May of 1974. Cost you a whole dollar bill back then. And this is, along with the pricing guide, which you would find here, this is basically the original Mopar Performance catalog. Now, even back then, you basically got, let me section this out for you here. You got a nice, pretty decent pamphlet size with all kinds of specifications in here for parts that you could pick up along the way. Breakdowns, how to put things together. It was a how-to manual early on for guys just in general for putting their cars together. Here's something for you Hemi fans. There's a blown up, exploded view of the Hemi with all the different nomenclature and all the part numbers that you can order up for your Hemi. And of course, you would peruse into your parts book or your pricing book, and that's where you get all that information from. So in essence, this would have been the beginning. And in here, it's not so much a how-to manual. There were supplementary manuals for those. But it would give you instruction sheets on valve jobs, piston clearances, things like that back here. That's what it would help you out with, and that was, in essence, the beginning of direct connection. Also in here, you would have some application-specific stuff, some camshaft-specific details, like, generic Hemi camshafts, things like that. And again, this is going back to 1974. When they started offering all of these parts to bracket racers, street race guys, and the like. Now then, I don't want to dismiss the 1974 catalog. There's some neat stuff in there, but this just kind of serves to give you an idea of where it all started way back nearly 50 years ago with direct connection. A couple of fun things. These are all done by parts code, by the way. So you would have a parts code. In this case, 3-19-1 was just rear gear sets. That's all that was. And so you'd look up your part code and then you get a part number that you would look up in your parts catalog or your parts price book. And to give you guys an idea, if you're running 9 3/4 inch rear axle set, yeah, you could get 557 gears. Look at all these gear ratios. This is just one I wanted to show you guys. Whole lot of different gear ratios that you could pick from, whether you're running an 8 3/4 with a 1 3/4 inch pinion, 8 3/4 with a 1 7/8 inch pinion, which would have been some of your more aggressive, higher horsepower applications. 391 would have been your most sedate gear set. And then Dana 60 would be 410 or 456. This is awesome. I love it. Anyway, those were some of the options that you had coming into this. Now then, I want you to fast forward in your mind about 10 years. That was 1974. And again, not a whole lot going on there, but this is what that evolves into. 500 pages, basically. It's got Carroll Shelby Speed Secrets, Mopar engines. Brought to you by Direct Connection. Got you a Duster doing a wheels up smoky launch. What's that back there? Is that a little Daytona? What you doing, Daytona? I'll get nasty is what Daytona's doing. Anyway, this is where things got really interesting. By the way, I did, it's funny, you go through these and you start finding little misprints. Anyway, I had to correct. You can see where I had marked out they had gotten the stroke wrong on a 383. But anyway, here's some things that I wanted to show for you guys. This book goes over every one of the engine families. And again, we're talking 500 pages here. Anything from exhaust sizing, carburetor jetting, carburetor setups, cylinder heads. Back then they sold de-stroker kits. In other words, you take your 426 Hemi down to 396 cubic inches. All the setups for that, every little tiny detail you could ever hope for. And they even did it for the 4-cylinder guys. Here's some stuff on the 2.2 liter. I want to show you guys one thing. All the guys that give everybody, or used to give everybody a hard time, and keep in mind, this is back in 1984. Old school Rampage front-wheel drive truck getting after it in the catalog. It's probably an 11-second 2.2 liter truck. So, anyway, giving you guys kind of an idea as far as how all this stuff breaks down. One thing I did want to give you, though, coming into this, because everything is kind of figured through horsepower numbers, and there's a lot. There's 500 pages in this catalog. By the way, the man himself is posing with, you guessed it, a Tunnel Ram 440, or could be a 383. It looks like a 440 though. So yeah, once again, the Hemi doesn't get top billing. But for you guys, I want to share with y'all the basic horsepower figures that Dodge would recognize and had dyno tested, and the associated carburetors that went along with them. Look at the very bottom of that page. Hey, old schoolers, you're about to get real butt hurt. There you go. 2 AFBs would get you 390 to 410 horsepower with your 426 Hemi. Rated at 425. There's your real numbers right there, fellas. You can go ahead and pause that, check out what all the actual numbers were. But there you go. Thought that was pretty interesting, so I figured I would share that with you. That's coming right out of the catalog. But this also gives you, it gives you the math on how to calculate horsepower based on drag strip times. ETs, mile per hour, weight, the whole bit is discussed in this. Then you get into engine combinations. Here, I'll skip through all of these small blocks. I'll get to the big blocks for you guys. There's your 426 wedge, 383 and 440 motors. These are all, but I'll get to the Hemi, 426 Hemi 13-second combination. There you go. Yeah. So anyway, this listed, it would give you a blueprint for how to build your 13-second car, how to build your 10-second car, how to build a 980 car. Also, I want to share something else that I found to be kind of interesting. Now, keep in mind, this is back in 1984. And, oh, before I get to that, these are all the different camshafts. I got basically almost 2 pages worth of camshaft and camshaft specifications. Look at all that. All those camshafts you can pick for pretty much any setup. Hemis, B engines, A engines, 6 cylinders, you name it. There's your cams, all of the specifications right there for you. Pretty cool stuff. But one of the more interesting things about all of this, and again, by the way, every speed secret that you ever hear about on Engine Masters, on Hot Rod Power TV, whatever you want to look up, all those speed secrets were being adjusted and being, I said adjusting, so I'm literally looking right at it. Here's another for you front wheel drive guys talking about that 2.2 liter. I love that kind of stuff. This is back when, I mean, these cars were quick even back then, guys. They were hurting some feelings. Teach you how to tune Hollies. This is one of my favorite sections. Chapter 26, nitrous oxide. Walks you through some of the tuning tips on nitrous oxide. Chapter 27, turbocharging. That's right. See, one of the things that a lot of guys don't think of is, you think turbos are something new. Like putting turbos on an LS is something that's, the latest thing. They've been putting turbos on these engines for forever. And then you get into this chapter 28, supercharging. This is primarily talking about positive displacement superchargers. So everything is discussed. All of the secrets are discussed in this book. And again, there aren't any punches pulled. Really, if you want to know how something worked, if you wanted to know how to tune something, if you needed super stock blueprint specifications for your engine, send your engine with the parts to the machine shop, and then you just hand them this page of the book. If you're going to shave off something in the block, it'll tell you how to shave off the intake manifold. All of that is discussed in this book. And the neat thing about it is that it spreads over all engine categories, and it's fairly in depth for all engine categories. And again, we're talking about nearly 500 pages. Guys, by the time it's all said and done, it's like 483 pages. It's crazy. But again, it'll teach you, it'll walk you through 15-second, 14-second combinations, 13-second combinations for your 273 or 318. And this is at a time when a 13-second car was extremely fast. I mean, you would consider that something healthy on the street. So again, all of that, all the parts you could ever need, all the knowledge is all in here as well. And it was put together by a guy by the name of L.S. Shepard through Brian Schramm, who was the director of Direct Connection back in the day. And it's just it's just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to actually building an engine. So what do we have today? Well, opening Direct Connection back up basically yields some parts, and that's about it. You've got a pulley combination for your Hellcat, sorta, which I'm still a little bit on the fence about, even though we're having crazy weather right now down here where it's like basically summer weather in December, January now. But the thing is when it gets cold down here, you get ridiculously low DAs, and some of those kits, well, they don't have anything in terms of provisions that I can see for fueling. So it kind of scares me a little bit, at least for the Hellcats. But that Direct Connection online catalog doesn't have any tuning tips, doesn't really have any parts, doesn't have any breakdown or blow up of the motors the way that we saw way back when, hearkening on all of that nostalgias. But yet I go through the original catalog, and you know, it's not just the Hemis that are being talked about. There's your basic 273, 318, 360, your A/LA engine breakdown. Look at that. Parts list and everything. Tune-up tips. How to build your XX car. That's all that was in Direct Connection. And I get it, you know, back in the day, I guess more people actually worked on their own cars. Owning one of these cars and racing was a lifestyle. And that's what people did. That's not just their hobby. That's kind of what they did. That's why they went to work. And so, you know, they took this stuff very seriously. Whereas now, I mean, you just take your car to a tuner and the tuner shop does tuner shop stuff to it. You get it back and, you know, it's a done deal at that point. So I guess a lot of the DIY aspect has been tuned, no pun intended, out of Direct Connection with these kits, with these stage kits, I should say. And with the camshaft, interestingly enough, going back through and looking at the latest Direct Connection catalog, was there any mention of what springs you needed with that camshaft? That basically the HHR grind, that 233, 230 grind, or 223, 230 grind. Is there any mention of lifters? Is there any mention of really anything to go along with that cam? Not really. And aside from that, you get into exhaust options and things like that, but there's no knowledge base. Let me give you another scenario real quick. I'm just going to kind of randomly kind of sift through this real quickly, and if I can find it without eating up too much time, this thing will help you break down your distributor curves, timing, what combinations like what max timing, all of that broken down in here. All the different tune-up secrets are in here. One of the funner things that I was looking at, and I just have to find it. I thought I had marked the page. That might have been the one that fell out, that bookmarker. But here is, I think I had shown this earlier, but header charts for Hemis. This would be your race headers. This breaks everything down for you. Kind of funny, they're calling out for your average general purpose header, 2-inch by 28-inch long primaries, 3.5-inch by 24-inch collector. You're not messing around. But for a lot of the other combinations, they're significantly smaller. For the LA type motors, that's, you know, 1 3/4, 1 7/8 if you're really pushing it. But The idea is still the same. You had so much knowledge, so much education in this book. The average racer could sit down with this book over the course of a weekend of studying it specifically for the combinations that they were looking for. And on Monday, have a parts list and a knowledge base and the confidence to tear the thing down or to build the engine that they need through the direct connection dealer and have their car up and running within a week or two from scratch. And all the knowledge on how to do all of that would be found right here in your direct connection book. So it's interesting to me that, yeah, we're bringing back the direct connection name. But I'm hoping that it's going to be brought back in the way that the old books brought it back. The old books that, well, focused on these guys. Little Daytona back there. Chassis setup, I think, is in it. Well, I know it's in another book. It's not in this one, but I think that one actually shows how to build to fab your front engine rear drive Daytona. But anyway, look at that nastiness. That's who made direct connection great. It was guys like these that were out there on the weekends representing and flying that Dodge flag so high. Well, we've been doing that for a while with no support. Now we do have the direct connection support. What about the knowledge base to go along with it? And really, again, that's where the direct connection program came into its own. I mean, we're talking 500 pages worth of, and I'm going to keep saying that over and over again because it sounds vaguely important, but a lot of the history of the engines is built into this. A lot of the there's Gen 1 Hemi stuff, Gen 2 Hemi stuff in here. There's all, like, look, here's some stuff, there's some generic Hemi stuff in there for you guys. Everybody always wonders, why do they call it a Hemi? See that cylinder? See that combustion chamber? Valves aren't in there, but that's why. Looks like somebody took a softball and just jammed it into some aluminum. That would be a dual plug, a later cylinder head. Not one of the early single plug. But, I mean, it even goes into real minor details when setting up hood scoops, of all things, right over here. You know, talking about make sure it's sealed properly, make sure you have real Mother Henny type stuff, but it all makes perfectly good sense. And, you know, for the guys that were willing to learn and for the guys that wanted to put in the time and the effort to learn this stuff, direct connection was a really great place to be. But again, going back to, or fast forwarding to, I should say, the modern era, the tunes are locked. So yeah, you get to keep your factory warranty, but it's a factory tune with a lot of nannies to give you a small bump in power and keep it warrantable. Now, granted, nothing in these books would have been warranted back in the day, but these were guys that were racing their cars. They wouldn't go back to the place and say, I need my money back, I blew my car up. But the thing about it is they're not teaching you anything. And at least not yet. And I'm wondering how that's going to come about. Kaniskas had said that they're going to have a, how was it put again? The hotline. They were also going to have it's going to be education and stuff like that. So far, I haven't seen anything come from that. Nobody has, but also haven't heard of anything. And talking to everybody that I know that is going to be a part of direct connection, nobody has been talking about the education part of it. In other words, if someone were to come to the service desk and go, hey, I need to talk to one of your direct connection guys, I'm thinking about doing blah, blah, blah to my whatever it is. Somebody like me just pops up from behind that counter and goes, hey, what can I do for you? This is how that works. This is how this works. This is why we do this. Is there going to be any of that? Is there going to be any teaching? This is why we go about this approach. It's a total systems approach. It's not just a piecemeal thing. This is why something works. Good question. I'm glad you asked that question. This is why the part that you're asking about does work or doesn't work, however the case is. It's that level of involvement that kept guys going to drag strips like this. And this picture, actually, there's a lot more than 1,000 words in this picture, aside from the freaking smoking tire wheelie that the Duster is doing and the actual altered chassis Daytona in the background. This isn't Houston Raceway Park or Atco or something like that. This is Drag Strip USA. Could be 1/8 mile, could be 1/4 mile, but Drag Strip USA. You got your tower, you got your Christmas tree right here, you got a field, somebody's house in the background. That's old school hot rod drag racing. And from the width of the lanes, that's an old school outlaw. But this would have been at Central Michigan Raceway. So again, you know, I'm floored as to how much information was in these catalogs back then. And I wanted to bring this to you and offer this to you because this is where it comes from. This is why I get so excited about direct connection. It's because as a kid, reading these catalogs and growing up and being around drag strips and being around these guys and just the wealth of knowledge that these guys have and had, unfortunately, because a lot of these guys aren't with us anymore. The old school guys, the guys that back in the 80s were in their 70s out there racing. I swear some of those guys would not survive unless they had a cigarette and a freaking cup of coffee or a beer in their hand. It's pretty funny. But anyway, it's just interesting when you start talking about direct connection. The first thing people think of is, oh, the stage kits, the tune kits or whatever. And I'm like, dude, that's like 1 or 2 pages out of a 500-page catalog. 100 of those pages of which would have something to do with just engine setups or actual engine setup and what parts work, what doesn't work, and all this other. The tune aspect is only like a couple of pages. So anyway, let me get back to you guys. Let's see. No shout out to Michael Corleone. Gary's in saying, hello, everyone. Eric's in. Ryan Zappalak, what's up, brother? Said, Happy New Year, my brother. Love you, man. Hope you and Natty Light have the best 2022 ever. You too, brother. Thumbs up. Give me a holler, brother. Space Dog saying this new direct connection is only for Hellcats. Man, this is Space Dog 504. Man, you would be forgiven to think that it is, but no, they've got the red eye variants. The Hellcats have some, I would say, a little bit more easily published and marketed kits than anything else. There's really nothing in there for the 5.7 or the 392, aside from the fact that there is the comp HHR grind. Stage 2 is what it is in the comp catalog, the 223, 230 grind cam. That is on a 115 degree lobe separation angle, which I'm a little bit about that on that. But for right now, the only thing that's offered for the NA guys is some cold air kits, some service parts, and some exhaust kits for the 5.7. Aside from that, nothing for the NA guys. And again, Ryan, love you, brother. Y'all have an awesome year. Call me, dude. Sean saying, Happy New Year to the Mopar family. Thanks for all the content, Mr. Mason. Is really helpful for the ones of us that are new with the modern Hemi. Got the flex, like it. Happy to help. Chuck saying, Happy 2022. Nice. Thank you. Happy to you too. DM saying, Happy New Year, B. Happy New Year, D. M. Slowly going fast. Love that name. We need to love, we need some love for the 375 horsepower bolt-on. Happy 5.7. Yeah, I'll tell you something. It's kind of interesting because the 5.7 takes to power, just any kind of power adder, whether it's headers, power improvers, I should say, headers, exhaust systems, things like that, takes to it really well because quite frankly, it's neutered from the factory in a few different ways. Well, the first way is that it's not given a variable runner intake manifold the way that the truck is. If the car was given that intake manifold, it'd pick up another 15 to 20 horsepower. But the manifolds are basically, it's a log style manifold. So just putting on Hellcat or /392 manifolds would make a big difference for that thing. The camshaft is a little bit soft in it as well, although it's not terrible. It's, you know, obviously not a very high performance camshaft grind given the head flow and the potential even of the intake manifold that's on that car, which, if you're being real critical, is more or less just a plastic version runner wise of the 6.1 liter. 6.1 liter intake's gorgeous, but yeah, I mean the 5.7 is just kind of a, like if it were a snake, it would have bit you type version of that 6.1 just in polymer. So, and that's been proven before with, you know, guys that have done power comparisons. There's just not much of a difference between the two. So, in saying all of that, yeah, the 5.7 does need a little bit of love. Hopefully, direct connection will start to scratch that itch. And I don't want to see it, like, are the scat packages even still a thing? I don't remember seeing those in the latest Mopar performance catalog, probably because of the cost. And see, here's the other thing. Back in the day, back in either 1974 when things got started, or back in 1984 when things were really trucking along, for direct connection, parts were fairly inexpensive. I'd say fairly inexpensive. They're actually pretty well line of sight the same price. If you do the conversion from 1974 to 2022, it's almost exactly 4-to-1. So let me sidebar here for a minute, but let's see, I'll just pick something that's kind of relatable. Let's see. Yeah, so for example, a drive shaft. Well, this doesn't really work out the way you would hope. $47.25 for a drive shaft. Drive shafts are about $1,000 these days if you go outside. But, you know, for a camshaft package, you would be looking at $135 back then, which is about right because, you know, today you might be looking at, you know, say around $500 for the full package, push rods, everything else. So the pricing kind of falls in line, although I will tell you that if you wanted some of the higher end stuff, like some of these crazier intake manifolds, you'd still be looking at about $1,200. So there's that, $1,200 to $1,500. But anyway, getting back to it, the issue that you run into with the modern stuff is that you just can't tune them the way that 500 pages worth of direct connection Carroll Shelby engine secrets, which is funny because Carroll Shelby isn't mentioned once in this book, by the way. But, you know, here's something fun. So, special car packages. This is one of the ones I wanted to bring to you. It goes through all of the different evolutions of the engine packages, including, here you go. It's got the little red express truck right here. All the parts that are included with that, special considerations, all the different stuff that came with those engine packages, as well as NASCAR, IMSA, sports car racing, which would be SCCA. You had all kit car, which would have been basically a kit car. What they called the kit car would have been a body in white car, is how you would see it today. And then, of course, you've got some shots of, you know, old school guys getting it done back then. There's a Barracuda, another Duster. Hey, Chuck, thank you very much. Saying, I did not think I had a chance in hell beating my friend's Mercedes 550, but somehow I won with my RT Shaker 6-speed in the quarter. 110 miles an hour. I used the shifting technique you taught me. Very cool, man. I'm stoked for you on that, bud. Just remember, you got to keep on practicing, keep on keeping with it, and you'll get better and better and more comfortable, and you'll be able to do it just like that. Nothing to it. And you can kind of hear me with the launch and everything. If you watch the Foxy, one of the Foxy videos, that was actually done when I think I had COVID at the time, but I couldn't talk. So it's just me driving the car, but you'll see like me rowing the gears with Foxy. You'll see me launching that car. Keep in mind, that car on a tire is an 11-second car, and that pass would have been like with the Kumos that are on that car, now just pedaling through, it'll run like a 1350 on the street. You can hear it barking every gear. Chuck said, I learned from your shifting work in Foxy. Perfect, that's it. Just listen to that video. If you study that video, you'll hear a lot of what I'm up to as I'm, when I'm talking about throttle control. That will absolutely show you if you listen to that and you pay attention. Notice I'm not talking, or because I couldn't talk, but listen to that video, and that will actually show you how I would launch that car. That's on street tires at street pressure. So those are those itty bitty ass all season Kumos on the back of the car at 32 psi. Actually, no, 36 psi is what they're set to. So there you go. I'm glad that helped. That's super cool, man. I love hearing about your success, bud. Very cool. Thank you again, bud. Gary's asking, hey B, with a stock or 10 overbore, 12.5 or 13.1 compression, 392, 6-speed manual, 3,700 pound race weight, Scatty, would you recommend ported stock intake or aftermarket one like a sniper with a custom cam from me? Man, it totally depends on what you're wanting to do with this thing. But at 13-to-1, here's the problem with 13-to-1 compression. The problem is, let's start out with 12.5-to-1. The problem with 12.5-to-1 is that it's not at 14-to-1. And the problem with 13 is that it's not 15. So I would suggest it. Now, the thing is, you start ramping up compression at this point, you are now committing to either race gas or E85. So what would I suggest? I would suggest, if you're planning on going that route, you're going to have stanky tie bars and collars, PSI 15, 16 springs. You're going to have one of my cams that's going to be probably one of the 230 duration cams, the bigger ones. It's going to be on a fairly tight lobe separation angle though, and you're going to want to try to turn that thing as hard as you can with a sniper intake. It is going to not be happy down low. And so because of that, this is a commitment moment. And that's when I start to significantly caution guys. I'll say, look, you're building the rotating assembly. Here's a better idea. Build an 11-to-1 426 ported stock manifold with a larger throttle body. That will be a hell of a fun car to drive. It'll pick up some power across the board, put a fairly healthy cam in it. Again, somewhere in the high 220s, low 230s on the intake side. Keep the lobe separation angle a little bit on the tight side and advance it quite a bit. And it's going to be torquey, snappy as hell on the street. And it's going to be a riot, and it's not going to be a level 9 pain in the ass to try to tune, because that's the problem with these Hemis. They flow a ton of air, but they flow it in gulps. And so you don't get any real port velocity going through those runners until you're spinning it with like that sniper intake, until you're spinning it to about 4,500 RPM, 5,000 RPM. Displacement is your best friend when it comes to those engines. The problem is that a lot of guys just aren't going to go spend all that money only to be just a hair faster than a stock Hellcat. A lot of guys just simply won't do it. So if that is the plan though, and you want to stay in the two blueprints are street focused or track focused, and you can never be fast enough and have enough of anything when you're track focused. Because now RPM becomes a thing. Spring material becomes a thing. Like I say, PSI 1516 is the only spring I'll recommend for the Hemis because the valves are so big. You know, pistons, you'll be going aftermarket. Shoot. I mean, you're talking low tension rings. You're talking wide ring gap. You're talking a lot of different things that are not necessarily street friendly. So what would I recommend? Again, it's going to completely be decided on what you're going to do with the car. If you go stroker, I would say, yeah, you're definitely going to want to go with a sniper style intake manifold if you are planning to make it track focused or roll racing focused. And in that respect, you got to have a plan for this car. If you're like, dude, no, it's going to be roll racing. Well, then you're going to need something with an intake center line around 109 degrees, maybe even as much as 110 with a lot of duration and a wide lobe separation angle. You know, cams, honestly, that look a little bit like the Comp 274 fit well in that application. By the way, it's also a good blower cam. I've got a couple of cam grinds that work in that application. Dr. Differentials put one of my larger cams in a supercharged 392 application that, from what I've heard of it, sounds nasty. I just don't know where it's wound up yet in terms of power or anything like that. So, but it really, when it comes down to it, is how much drivability do you really have to have out of the thing? Because again, with the Hemis, they get real rowdy real quickly, and they can get to the point where you just don't want to drive the car. Like at first, it's like, man, that's really cool. Wow. Ooh, ah. And then it's like, man, this car sucks to have to live with every day. Or at least, you know, if you want to go driving the thing around for any real length of time, especially if you get stuck in traffic with it. So again, you got to set the goal, figure out exactly what you're going to be doing with the car, and then go from there. If nitrous is going to be involved, just about another 4 degrees intake and exhaust duration. And I'm trying to think what else. There's just so much to it, man. There's so much to it, and the problem is that there is no winning combination and there is no right answer. They're all winning combinations and they're all right answers depending on what the question is in terms of what you're going to be doing with the car. Gary's saying fuel is a street tune 93 and E85, also 104 GT plus tune and 85 for track day. Okay, so yeah, well, I mean, I guess you already heard what I said about the compression ratios. You know, 13.5 to 1 will work no matter what. The thing is 13.5 to 1 works great with 104 GT plus. Works also great with regular 100. We're talking Sunoco GT, and in this case, 260 GT and then 260 GT plus for the 104. E85, if I'm being totally honest, you're really going to be happy with that around 13.5 to 14 to 1. I just will caution you that that will not be a 93 octane ever driving around type of a scenario. In other words, the timing would be so neutered with that engine at that compression ratio that you would really start to look at potentially stinging your exhaust valves. Because remember, when your timing is retarded, your exhaust valve temperature goes up because you have so much more, in this case, not a ton more, you get in the cam timing, anything else, but in general, the more retarded your timing is, the hotter your EGT is going to be, your exhaust gas temperature, which can start to cook your exhaust valve over time. So just be mindful of that. And that's the other thing. There's no such thing as a conservative tune. I hate the word conservative when we're talking about tuning. It's no, it is conservative, and I use the term as well because it's kind of part of the general parlance of tuning. But the reality is that there is a proper tune for the cam and the fuel and the conditions the vehicle is run in. And anything outside of that is going to be either too aggressive or too soft. And again, three, little Bo Peep and the three red bears or whatever it is, that's what it is. You got to be right in the right zone. If not, you can hurt the motor either way. Chuck, thanks again, man. I appreciate that. Asking, is it true for us NA drivers that colder temps produce faster numbers? Yes. My shaker temp was running colder on a tire, and I broke 13 seconds. Now my RT shaker is 12.9, but won't in the summer. So yes, significantly different. So as the temperature drops, the density altitude will drop. Now that's a really fancy term. Density altitude is, and it's actually an it's not, well, it is, but it isn't, an aviation term. And what it basically means is what is the adjusted altitude that you're at with the colder temperature. The lower the temperature, the denser the air. The denser the air, the more oxygen per cubic meter of air it can suck in. So more oxygen, your car will compensate and give it more fuel, makes more power. Conversely, in hotter conditions or in conditions where you have lower barometric pressure or both, you have less oxygen per cubic meter of air available in the surrounding air. Air, by the way, per cubic meter is roughly, like 13 pounds per square yard, basically, of air. Anyway, that reduction in oxygen will also give you a reduction in fuel delivery, which means you'll generally be making less power. In other words, think of it like this. When the air is cold, your engine, let's say your engine displaces 400 cubic inches. And it's rated at a certain power at a certain temperature. In this case, J1379, which would be 70 degrees and let's call it 30 inches of mercury of atmospheric pressure. If you run your car in temperatures less than 70 degrees, let's say we're running in 50 degree weather, then there will be more oxygen available for your engine to ingest because the air is cooler and more dense. So it will make your engine run, and at 50 degrees at sea level, you would be at roughly negative 300 feet, which is to say that in this case, you would be making, you'd be about negative 400 feet. So you'd be making about 0.75% more power. For every 1,000 feet under any particular density altitude, you pick up 3% in power. So for every, let's say you're at 0 degrees or 0 feet density altitude, and you go to negative 1,000 density altitude, you'll pick up 3% in power. Or in essence, it'll act like your engine is 3% larger. It's another way you can look at it. Because it's in essence true. Your volume that you're sucking in terms of air is 3% more. So you're going to make 3% more power in general. Along with that, you've got lower operating temperatures typically. Your engine coolant temperature is more easily managed and maintained. In that respect, that could mean that you're launching the car at a lower EGT, at a lower engine coolant temperature, ECT, which will also help to bump up power as well by reducing the pressure delta in the cylinder as the cylinder drops to the ambient pressure outside. Now that's getting real nerdy, and I get that, but there are other reasons besides just being able to suck in more oxygen that will help to make the car make more power. So again, the warmer the temperature is for the area that you live in, yes, your car will make less power. Now, there's a little bit of a twist, and that comes in grains or relative humidity. I'm not going to get into why it's called relative humidity, and I'm not going to get into any of that stuff, but just know that grains, aka humidity, is also a determining factor. Significant determining factor, the more efficient your engine is. In other words, the higher your compression ratio. Are you boosted? Both. If those are the case, then you can see a larger impact on performance with the humidity / grains going up. It's a detrimental effect. The reason for that is that the extra water molecules displace oxygen in that same square meter of air that your car is going to be sucking in air from. So you just get less oxygen. That's part of the density altitude calculation. So on a very cool, very dry day, that's when your naturally aspirated car will make a lot more power, all things considered, than it would on a very hot, very humid day. Now you start getting into different tables and tuning tables, and that can change a little bit with timing and air charge values and things like that. But again, in general, for the NA guys, you're hoping for very cool, very dry air. That's what you've got a good running car for the day. But thank you again, Chuck. Let's see, make sure I made it. Hopefully I answered that question. But thank you, buddy. Let's see. Slowly saying, I just think it's crazy. We're in a time where a 375 horsepower starting point is laughed at. That is kind of funny. More to that point, a 13-second car is like, oh, that thing is slow. Really? Last I checked, 13-second car is a lot of fun. And again, thank you, Chuck. Oh, Gary's saying, yes, it will have the needed mods. Cody's saying, what's going on, B? Had an awesome weekend of racing with friends and family, and go more lined up with friends. Very nice. I like it. Gary saying, thanks again, B. Scout will stay NA, have 2 supercharged cars now. Very cool. Yeah, if you decide you want to go with, if you want to build a fairly serious NA combination, I'll put it to you, that is going to be streetable. Okay, we're not talking about some just over the top type of a thing. We're talking about just a fun thing that hits hard for the street. I would build a 426 or a 440. It really doesn't matter either way you go. Put a fairly healthy cam in the thing that's going to at least let it spin. Keep the stock intake manifold and adjust your short runner valve, your SRV table from 47 to like 4,500. Well, maybe 4,700 still be okay. Lock out the cam and just have something that is a lot of fun to drive. Keep it around 11-to-1 compression ratio so you can still have fun with it on 93 octane, 91 octane. And if you want to throw a little bit of race gas in there for insurance, cool. Here's the thing though, I don't want you to don't get wrapped up in well, if it's a race gas tune or this tune or that tune. These engines are not very sensitive when it comes to timing. I've done on Quick Brick on his car on E85. It's got a small cam, which is right up these cars' alley, by the way, with a 392 engine. Car picked up power basically everywhere. In fact, I used to have his dyno chart over here somewhere. Anyway, the point of that is that I did timing sweeps with that car one night. I had some time on my hands, and it was a situation where I had the car on the dyno, and I started out at what in the tune would read to be 17 degrees of timing. It's a rising curve, but just to kind of give you a landmark, kind of a pivot number. Started at 17, went to 18. The car picked up maybe 4 horsepower. Went to, this is on E85, and went to 19. That's about where the car was the happiest with just regular 93 octane. Picked up maybe 2 from there on E85, going 85 tune versus 93 octane tune. So now we're sitting at 19 degrees of timing. Now, conventional wisdom would tell you that on a stock compression engine with a cam, you should be able to just start throwing timing at the thing, because we're just basically sitting at what is in essence a couple of degrees away from what is kind of optimum timing with the factory camshaft, manifold and everything else with long tubes. So from there, it was another degree, a couple of degrees of timing, nothing. Throw another couple of degrees of timing just to see if I can overtime it. And because at this point I was on E85, and I ended up at 23 degrees of timing. The car was non-responsive to any of that. In fact, it was one of those things where you just kind of, you make another pass and you just, golly, I just need some coffee or a Red Bull or something. This is boring to tears, because you're making pass after pass after pass. All I'm doing is changing timing values, doing a full timing sweep with this thing, and I just could not get it to respond. So that taught me a pretty valuable lesson. You know, once you're done with timing sweeps, you know, once you find out what the car likes on 93, normally that's going to be about where it's going to like life with the 85, unless you are talking about something with some significant compression ratio. And from there, it's like you probably wouldn't want that for the street anyway. So, because now you're talking about a significant investment on top of what you've already put into the car. So, but yeah, definitely some good stuff. But yeah, E85, it's kind of funny, you know, and with the bigger cams with these cars, you'd think that you'd start commanding some pretty big timing values, but not really. By the way, I know that those numbers sound low. There is some built-in advance. I want to say it's like 8 or 10 degrees built in, but don't worry about any of that. You're only looking at the advanced numbers when you're messing with timing with these things. Gary's hanging out with Chuck. Challenger 50 saying, everyone wants the sound of the cam that hits so hard it's knocking holes in the pavement. Then reality hits and they realize the drivability sucks. You're right in keeping things sensible. You know what's funny is that so I've had pretty much everything I've ever had a cam in it, one of my cams in it. You know, I'm reminded of my vet. The Viper would get away with it because of large displacement, but that LS6, man, I just ruined that car with the bigger cam, and it's easy to do. You can put too much cam in a car and make it to where you just don't have fun driving it anymore. It becomes a turd below 4,000 RPM when you really start building something that makes a lot of power. So yeah, it's easy to get ahead of yourself, go straight to the bottom of the page. I want the biggest cam I can put in this thing. It looks cute on a dyno, but the real world will kind of remind you pretty quickly that those types of cams can be a real dog on the street. Chuck's hanging out with Gary. Nitto Tri-5s running 11.3s. And yeah, the shaker is my favorite for the NA stuff. Cody's going, any mod's going to block that spam message? No, they might get in there and knock it out. We have any mods? I don't know if we have any mods in. Is Rift in? Let's see. Oh, Gary's hanging out. Let's see. Chuck saying, can someone report that spam? I know. So he's saying, I have a Challenger 09 RT bought for $8,000. I also have a Crash 2019 392 Scatty that was more or less given to me. Should I sell both cars and buy a Hellcat, or take the 392, build it and boost it? Sell both cars and buy a Hellcat. The only reason why I say that is because you will be into the engine swap pretty heavily. Depends on what is your sensitivity to projects and builds. That's really going to be the answer to that question. Answers your first question a little bit better. Mainly because, I mean, look, you've got an 09 RT that in reality, if you put a bunch of money into that car, it's still an 09 RT. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that if buying a Hellcat is an option, then the right answer is always buy the Hellcat, because the Hellcat has a higher back end value. In other words, you can buy the Hellcat. Let's say you have the Hellcat for a little bit, you enjoy it, but it's really not your cup of tea. You can move on from the Hellcat. There's always a buyer for that car. A modified in a hot rod, not so much. And even though you might say, well, it was basically given to me, you're going to have a lot of secondary costs that are going to come in that buildup. As a matter of fact, you'd probably be better off, even though it's an RB block, it's a 392, all the really good stuff. Yes, you could transplant the thing right into your car, swap intakes, run everything more or less. It's still not going to be as good. You're still going to have to put a different cam in the thing. You're going to have to do something about locking the cam out just in general. There's going to be a lot of work involved that you normally wouldn't have to do. In fact, you would be better selling all the 392 stuff, yanking the 5.7 out of the RT, and doing a stroker 392 out of your RT. So, but the only real issue there is the fact that those heads just aren't going to be as good. See what I mean? By the time you're done with it, you will have compromised and sacrificed your way into a car that you're going to sink a lot of money into. I'd say part ways with both of them, find you a Hellcat and have a car that's really, really good from the factory already. Keep it maintained, keep good fuel in it. It can be a lot of fun. And if you want the fun of driving a 500 horsepower car, it's just a boop, push of a button away. Oh, Slow saying engine is perfect, but trans was cracked in an accident. Oof. Oh, Gary saying thanks, pissed off a good amount of tuned autos, but it's in the driver. Auto's a touch faster, but nowhere is fun. True that. Oh, Chuck's. Oh, yeah. Oh, White Knuckles got a fun question. Happy New Year. Do you think it's worth to add an ATI 50% underdrive dampener on a full bolt-on cam 5.7 and a bit of spray? Yes, I do. You'll pick up, say, 6 to 8 horsepower to the rear wheels, but if you're hitting it with spray, anything that you can do to help eliminate parasitic loss is a good thing. Remember, parasitic load is load. You're trying to reduce load when you hit it with nitrous for that spike. So yes, anytime you guys are running any nitrous at all, highly suggest the 15% underdrive pulley. Cody's asking, tips on how to beat a car with more horsepower. I know I can get my friend's 5.0 off the line with the Escape, but that's about it. You have to hole shot him. And as long as you can hook, stay in it longer than he can, that's all that's going to matter. You got to remember, the high horsepower cars have to run you down. So a lot of those guys know that coming into this. They're going to try to cut a really good light to reduce their rundown time. I've forced guys to red light. In fact, Shalandra was hysterical. Shalandra had more kills on the light than any car I've ever owned in my life. And every single one of the kills, even if I won the race, just, a chase is a race, whatever. Even if I got to the end of the quarter mile faster, which was about 9 out of 10 times when I raced NA Mustangs, mod for mod. We're not talking, you know, super high end stuff. You know, that car is a low 11-second car. So, but anyway, mod for mod, that car, even if I won the race, I would still have the guy's red light on me. And it was just the fact that that car got out of the hole so hard, and the guys just had to do whatever they could to try to reel me in as fast as they could, because if they didn't start reeling me in by a significant margin by half track, they weren't going to get me by the end of the quarter. Had a lot of real close races, but the main thing is just working on your hole shot. That's the main thing, getting the launch down. Oh, Slowly saying, thanks for the advice. Also, your advice on used Hellcats. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot that goes, when you're looking at used Hellcats, there's a whole lot that goes into that process. Low mileage is key in this, but not necessarily a maker or breaker. You want to know if it's a private party, get a good sense of the guy, find out if it's been maintained. If it's just been dogged or ragged out, you probably don't want it. The normal stuff applies at that point. I mean, by that measure, you wouldn't want Chandelier. Even though it's probably the most, that car's got so many oil changes. I've owned it for 3 years. I've probably done 7 or 8 oil changes, I'm guessing, at this stage. But yeah, happy to help. Slowly's hanging out with Chuck. Let's see. Chuck saying, Scats are awesome, but I don't regret buying my RT Plus shaker. I will upgrade at some point. Look, RT Plus is a fun car, man. And it's a shaker. It's actually, not to, you know, get all nerd on you, but it's kind of a rare car in a way. So the RT shakers are awesome. Chuck saying, super stock or red eye or 6-speed scat shaker? Damn. See, it would depend on what we're talking about. I mean, okay, so when I originally was looking at replacement for Shalandra, it was going to be a red eye. It was going to be a white red eye, regular body, not the wide body. And it would have been one of the first red eyes produced, as a matter of fact. And it was going to end up being way too expensive. And my car, which would have been a base model with a rear seat delete and a 309 gear, was like $87,000 or something stupid at the time. So that wasn't going to happen. But that was kind of the direction I was going. Now with the super stock option, you know, I spend a lot of time at the drag strip. So the super stock would probably be, well, I can tell you this, it would be my first pick. But if I was doing if it was just going to be something to go play in, and I wasn't, see, here's the problem. Super stock or red eye, they both fall into the same category. They're both obnoxiously fast. And I'm not saying that for effect. The super stock or the red eye fall into the same category that Chandelier falls into. Extremely fast. And you don't get a sense of fun all the time with the car. You end up going a certain speed. I'll give you a perfect example of this. My wife and I took the car out to dinner, and it just on the way back, these cars are so stable, and it's just so much fun listening to the supercharger doing its thing in this car. I mean, we're cruising down the highway, triple digit speeds, and we're just cruising. I mean, that's how stable they are. But it's like riding in a jet. You don't realize how fast you're going. You're just kind of going that fast. You go, oh, damn. In fact, it was one of the things that I would tell guys that were going from an RT to a Hellcat or from a 392 to a Hellcat. I would tell them, listen, you're going to have to readjust the way that your brain thinks of acceleration and cruising speed, because every single person that came from an RT to a Hellcat or from a 392 to a Hellcat, you'd find yourself cruising down the highway at 95 miles an hour. Not that that's dangerous. In fact, it's hardly dangerous at all. The only problem is that you get a ticket and you wouldn't realize it because they just cruise like that. Whereas, on the other hand, you find yourself behind the wheel of an RT or a 392 Scatty with a manual transmission, it's going to be fun to drive. You feel the acceleration, but more to the point, you're more a part of the car at that point. So, you know, I'm reminded of driving Foxy. Foxy is a lot of fun to drive. Love taking that car for a spin. You will never be confused as to the level of fast that you're going in that car, because you know where you are in the grand scheme of things in terms of gearing, throttle, and everything else. And it doesn't have the kind of power that the Hellcat does. So, you know, all the excitement is done before about 115 or 120 miles an hour. You basically run out of gear with the car, to be honest. But the Hellcats with the 262, they just keep going and going. The same sound that you're used to, it's there. They all sound the same. It's just that normal sound that you're just kind of used to when you're just driving the car translates to a higher mile per hour. So that's another thing you got to consider. Gary, thanks, man. Damn, I appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much. Saying thanks again. Thank you very, very much, my friend. Very generous. Very nice, man. Thank you so much. But hopefully that kind of answers the question. It's hard for me to, I'll put it to you like this. It's hard for me to say one is better than the other, because they're not. One will give a completely different driving experience than the others in that scenario. You know, one of the other questions that I get a lot is, well, would you go with a, you know, like a 1320 or a Hellcat? And that is, to be real honest with you guys, that is the hardest question to answer for me. It is, without a doubt, if not the hardest questions to answer, because number one, I have such a strong sentimental attachment to the 1320. But you can have so much fun with the 1320 on the street. And this is the thing that I try to tell guys. Like, look, this is what I'll ask. How often do you go to the drag strip? If you don't ever go to a drag strip, realistically, and you never have any plans on going to a drag strip, and the only thing you use the car for is just going out and goofing off, then one of the absolute best cars you can get is a Shaker 6-speed Scat Pack. In my experience, that combination is a freaking riot on the street. No, it is nowhere near as fast on the top end as a Mustang. It's the slowest of the group, but it's only slow by comparison. In other words, if you compare that car to a 10-speed auto Mustang, especially from a roll, it's really not going to be close. But the big difference is that you're in a muscle car, a car that weighs a lot, manual transmission and everything else. It's got a broody, beefy feel to it. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's not like you're going into a conflict unarmed. It'll run just fine against everything. It's just not as fast. But if you take your car to the drag strip and you want to have something that's consistently fast and it's safe to go fast there, then the Hellcat's the better bet. And really, it's up to you to decide how you're going to be using the car. I will tell you this. A lot of you guys know the story. At the shop, there have only been a couple of 3 or 4 cars that I was genuinely bummed out when they left. One of them was a candy striped 2014 392 6-speed Challenger. That car, for whatever reason, I just freaking fell in love with it. And for no good reason. It's not like it was any different than any other car that would roll through there. It's just that I love the 6-speed in the car. I love the look of the thing. I just love driving that thing. I wasn't out tearing it up or ragging on it. In fact, the only thing I did with it is I load tested it when the car came in and load tested it after the Supercharger. And it was just such a fun car, just a happy car. So that's one of the few cars that I was just like, oh man, I hate to see that thing go. Like, I'd love to see it again. Most of them is just, that's just another Hellcat, another red eye, another Hellcat, another 392, you know. And it would, not that you get bored with it, it's just that's how it would work out. Let's see. Bear with me here, guys. And again, thank you, Gary. I appreciate it, bud. Cody's saying, thanks for the advice. I know I can't get him from a roll until I get my upgrades going, so I'm going to do it best from a dig. Nice. Sully's asking, with Dodge going electric, what do you think modding looks like for e-muscle? Actually, there's a lot of options, or at least the same number of options if you look at the latest direct connection catalog. So it looks a lot like this. I have been saying that I would love to get my hands on one of the e-cars just to see if I could figure out a way and work with some electrical engineers. I'd develop electric nitrous. I would have capacitors on hand, and for lack of a better way of overly explaining this, hit a switch and you bypass the speed controller and you've got a capacitor that just dumps amperage into the motor. So it's in essence like, you know, hitting a freaking, it'd be electric nitrous. So that's one option you could look at. You know, there's that, there's larger battery packs. There's a lot that comes with torque management though, and that's really more to the point. Torque management is going to be what you would be doing the most adjusting with, and that's going to be making sure that you get a little bit more torque to the ground. You tell the computer, yes, it's okay to give, you know, an extra 50 foot-pounds of torque at launch, etc. There's a lot of tuning that I'm already doing to an internal combustion engine through torque management. Spark modifiers and all that don't exist, but there is still some motor timing that comes into play. Usually that doesn't make that big of a difference, so with electric motors. But there's a few things that you can do, and again, a lot of it has to do with torque management, just allowing the motors to throw more torque at them. Coolant pump, RPM, and things like that will also come into play too. So, but there are tuning options for sure. Tuxedo Black saying, hey B Mason, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, buddy. Saying also, what is vintage direct connection supposed to be, since this live video is titled It? Vintage direct connection would be the original direct connection from back in the day, all nearly 500 pages of it, along with the original catalog from 1974. But these would be what the original racers were reading. These would be all the specifics on all of those engines and how to make more power. For example, if you wanted to build a supercharged Hemi, you'd go to Chapter 8 in your Direct Connection Bible, which is what it calls itself, by the way. Anyway, and it will give you, a list of parts that you would need for your supercharged Hemi engine. So in this case, and there's a lot to it, there's so much to these things. But it tells you who to contact, where to get the pistons, where to get fuel systems, what head bolts you need. So there's so much to it that it just goes on and on and on. But all of this information, this is what you would use to build your engines back then. Chuck, thank you very much, buddy. Saying my RT shaker has gone sideways a few times unintentionally from a dig when street racing. Should I keep my traction control in normal to avoid this? No, you just need more better tire and a little bit better technique in terms of launching it. So, in terms of, if you're running on stock tires though, yeah, you can keep your traction control in street. The only problem with that is that you're going to get a lot of nannies kicking in on that. So, if it's me, I run with my traction control off all the time. You are far better off having a better tire and having a better technique on launch. And again, if you go back to the Foxy video, you got to remember Foxy is pretty stout for what she is. It's a 351, low compression, but it does have AFR 185 heads, a GT40 intake manifold. It's got an F-cam, but it does have 1.7s, and it's a stout little combination. Makes right at 300 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. And keep in mind, this is at a point in time where 300 horsepower to the rear wheels is significant, but it also makes something like 333, 323. What did that thing make in terms of torque? I know I've got that here somewhere. I will tell you with my face. It made, is this the right one? 337 pound-feet of torque to the rear wheels. So this is the corrected numbers on that car right there. So she's healthy, real healthy for an old school Windsor. And if you watch those videos, that's me launching that car with an old set of Kumos on the back of her. You can hear that thing. You can hear me modulating the throttle in first gear as I'm getting it rolling so I can grab second gear. And all of those, like I say, that's not, when I say it's not a performance tire, that is not at all a performance tire. You can hear the thing barking fourth gear in those videos. So yeah, definitely you can do it on the street, but again, it takes a lot of throttle control and a lot of practice. Again, I would suggest more practice, keep everything turned off so that you learn how to drive the car without the nannies. If the car's going sideways, modulate the throttle a little bit. Keep everything cool. If you watch the video when I'm driving the Mustang, you'll notice that I will barely be moving the steering wheel. The car's trying to react a little bit underneath me. I'm just barely maneuvering the steering wheel, steering it really more with the throttle and rolling into the throttle as much as I can without hazing the tires too hard. So again, it's practice, practice, practice. That's the fun part of this. This is a skill you can get really good at really quickly. It can just be tough finding a good place to practice. But the more you practice, the better you'll get, and just play with it. Have fun. That's when your practice is the most productive. Tux is saying, looks pretty old school to me. Pretty nice, though. It's very old school. Gary's saying, no, turn it off. Exactly. My man. I like it. Challenger 50 asks, indirect connection to selling the wide body kit. Have you thought about making your car a wide body for bigger tires? No, not really, because I don't really need bigger tires. the 28 1050s or the 305 45 17s are really good on my car. So I don't really need a wider tire. And I like kind of the older school look of the narrower body. So I'm going to leave it at that. If I had another one, I would probably look into the wide body as an option, though. Chuck saying, my Nittos reduced this issue. Yeah, they did. Oh, Gary's saying torque management will kill your 60 foot. What's your 60 foot now? Slowly saying, no traction control and R888s for the win. Good tire. Hilton said, AB, think you'll have fun tuning that new turbo straight six? You better believe it. See how fast I can get my hands on one. Gary saying what he said. Yeah, no, that would be fun. I can tell you though, there's going to be a lot of nannies in that. It would be, let me think about this. It would be a lot of fun to play with it. There's going to be some, with it being a turbo, there's going to be overboost. There's going to be so many things you'll be able to make it do that'll, and it's going to depend on how the wastegate is set up. God, the thing is when you have a turbo, guys, here's what you have to understand. A turbo from the factory is basically a cheat code. Turbos don't care about altitude. Turbos don't care about pretty much anything. They always make power, period. And they are a cheat code like you would never believe. So if it's got some kind of electronic wastegate, you know, and it's pulse width modulated, we're just going to hold on to this until a certain point and then start opening it up. There's going to be a lot you'll be able to do with it. And, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how guys start succeeding with that. That's going to be pretty sick. Mike's asking, hey, Mason, I had a quick question. If I wanted to switch my halogen headlight assemblies to the OEM HID assemblies for my 19 Challenger, what kind of nightmare am I in for? It's not that big of a deal. You just have to remove the, you need to remove the bumper to get that assembly off. But aside from that, it's really not that bad. You've got, how many push pins are in there? I got to sit here and remember. It's not a complete and total nightmare. It's going to take you a better part of a day, though, to knock it out. What is this Russian-looking hieroglyphics down here? So anyway, guys, getting back to it, I wanted to show you guys. We got some guys on that weren't on earlier. You know, this is from 1984. There was guys getting after it back then with the old school front wheel drive. People go, tuner, front wheel drive stuff. Back in 84, you had there was a lot of guys running the 4 cylinders, especially the 2.2 liter. Had a lot of guys racing those things. So anyway, it's just fun to, show some pictures. This is, again, some old school stuff. Lots of Hemis stuff, lots of big block stuff, lots of 360, 318 stuff in here. But, I mean, you get into the ignition systems. You get into everything. And the thing about it is that you don't get the education today, or at least that I can tell so far, that you got back then. Let's see. This is... So you start getting into engine theory, engine geometry, things like that. And this is all stuff that the catalogs, I mean, honestly, not just Direct Connection. Ford Racing had a lot of the same stuff in theirs as well. And, interestingly enough, you would start to see just how exciting engine building and all the math and everything else. I was never good at math. And then I started reading this and got into this. The only reason why I started getting good at math. This is another illustration I want to show you guys too. This is with the cam on the actual base circle. Right here. Anytime somebody asks, what does it look like when the lifter is just on the base circle and not on the actual lobes? That's what they're talking about. Every once in a while, guys go, what does it mean, base circle? That's just what that means. So, pretty cool stuff there. Trying to see if there's anything. Oh. And again, for you guys that love it when old school guys get really worked up about horsepower numbers. Where did that one go? Oh, that's the one that fell out. Oh, I got to find that one again. Anyway, while I'm talking, I'm going to be scrolling through this thing, see if I can find the, here we go. This would be what your drag strip dyno, and anyway, dynoing the engines, this is what they would actually end up looking like. So 426 Hemi, 390 to 410 horse, 440, 270 to 330, 446 barrel, 340 to 370. So not exactly what they were rated at from the factory. No slouch to be certain, but you know, a lot of those big horsepower figures were optimistic to say the least. And that agrees with what I had seen dynoing the cars back in the day. Where a, you know, a fairly healthy, you know, 426 Hemi with a 4-speed would put down about 360 to the rear wheels. Oh, talking about some wiring issues or something along. Oh, okay. Well, it depends. If you're swapping out the entire assembly, that's one thing. If you're just swapping out bulbs, I don't think it'd be any big deal. Oh, and he's saying most of the good LED options require you to keep the dust caps off, which to me is a no. Yeah, mine are always off. So maybe I just misunderstood what the question was. But yeah, if that's the case, then, and if they've got the ballast in the bulb themselves, and it's just a pop in and pop out, just like swapping out any other bulb. I thought you were asking about the actual assembly, like the one that comes in the direct connection catalog, where you can do the lighted tube in the headlight and all that. That's kind of cool. So, oh, by the way, even back in the day, they offered body in white. This even goes back to 1974 even. The only downside is that I can't get you an old school price, because those are price on demand, POD. So you'd have to call them up and say, hey, what is my price on this? But those are all price on demand, which I thought was kind of a bummer. But fun fact, all of the body in white cars had column shift floor pans. So you couldn't order your body in white car. Just dumped out half a Pepsi over here, so we're gonna want some Brawny to quicker pick her up or figure that out. But they were all solid pans and column shift. So kind of a quick bit of trivia for you on that. Slowly's asking, why was the SRT4 scrapped if we seem to be going back in that direction? Man, here's the thing. The SRT4 fell out of favor basically because the neon was scrapped. The SRT4 was freaking awesome. And you just couldn't make a car like that today. The safety standards are significantly higher, presumably, and it's just a small car, but man, you could build those things. Again, that car I've got a lot of sentimental value in, and love SRT4s, and just never did own one, but every time I see one, I love them to death. But the neon went away, and with the neon going away, everything else went away. The problem is, here's the thing. The neon was still part of what you would consider to be just a regular car from the 90s and early 2000s. Very basic. You might get a driver's side airbag. There wasn't a whole lot of engine. I mean, there was, but there wasn't a whole lot of engineering when we're talking about safety and things like that. It's not like what you see today. People were just cool with having a lot more basic transportation back then. And I mean, the neons were really good. Even the non-SRT4s were fun to drive. So, you know, they were light, not overly powerful, but you didn't need a lot of power to get the thing really scooting when the thing doesn't weigh any more than about 2,700 pounds, right? So, anyway, if we could have cars like that again, the lightweight 90s style car would be a lot of fun. I just don't know that you'll ever really see that again. It's kind of a bummer, because you're right. I mean, it does seem like we're kind of trying to go in that direction, but I don't know. The reality is just that we don't have the buying community, I don't think, out there that would go for it. Chuck is checking out. Thank you again, Chuck. I appreciate everything, buddy. Thank you very much. Gary's saying, good night, Chuck. Slowly establishing plenty of 600 horsepower E85 SRT4s. So down here, there is a fleet of them that will roll together up to the drag strip. And in that crew, you've got 13 second, 12 second, 11 second, 10 second, 9 second varieties of SRT4s, and they are all just into those cars. They're all fast. I mean, they're just neat to watch. So you've got, you know, cars that are just a little bit warmed over from stock, all the way to cars that drove there under their own power that will get down with a high 9 second pass on a drag radial. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. But yeah, I've seen them absolutely wreck shop on fools, and I mean, not even seem like they're breaking a sweat in the process. So yeah, you know what's funny too? You know, I always say there's a few cars that I will admit it's weird that I've never owned. And the SRT4 is absolutely one of them. It kind of falls in line with, like, I talked so highly about them. Why did I never buy one? The answer to that is I have no idea. But the SRT4 is one of the cars. The GT500 is definitely up there with those. And I've owned 2 Lightnings. I would probably buy another one because I just miss driving those trucks. But if you notice, the sentimental favorite, the Lightning, or any of some of these cars that I've had, they're not the fastest cars I've ever owned. Like, in other words, would I put together another Viper? Probably not. Would I put together another Corvette? It would take something a lot like a buddy of mine's Corvette, a base model C6, Grand Sport body kit with a really well sorted blower LS3. That would be what I would put together for me for a vet. But I mean, there's just, it would take something real special or very, very specific for me to actually go down that path again. But the sentimental favorite for me will probably always be something like a Lightning or an SRT4 or something along those lines. Slowly saying, at least here I'm social. Very cool. Chuck saying, I have a feeling my cold numbers will go up a bit when it's hot again. All of ours do. But whatever, my Challenger is the most fun I've ever had with my clothes on. Hey, just remember, everybody else's numbers go up when it gets hot too. Unless they're a turbo. And sometimes theirs go down because they're a cheat code. Slowly saying, and for a 4-cylinder, they sounded great. Yeah, they did. Sounded really good when you're gapping fools with one. So I knew a guy, this is kind of funny. You know, we all knew that guy, right? But I knew a guy that had an SRT4, and at the time it was probably a 1050, 1070 car on a slick in really good air. So your garden variety 11.0 combination with an SRT4. The problem with this car, and the reason why it was so difficult to mess with, is because it hit hard as nails on the highway. And the other issue is that the guy could freaking drive it from a dig. So he'd roll the thing around on drag radials and just put a hurting on basically anything that would roll up on him, or at least run with him for long enough to make him second guess life, because the car looked freaking stock. It was a black SRT4. You'd have never known what was about to happen to you. So yeah, I mean, the SRT4's lots of fun, very cool car. You'll never hear me say anything bad about him because, again, I do have that lingering little crush on him. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably build one. I would love to have built one for autocross or for running at Motorsports Ranch. And I have a, I was showing all the pictures of the front wheel drive stuff. I really like hot rod front wheel drive cars. And it's funny because, there was a point in time with the whole market and how everything was going. Front wheel drive cars like the Daytona, the Omni GLH, the 600, and a few other cars, they weren't really looked at in terms of a hot rod. It was just basically like an economy car, but with the right touch and the right parts, you can make them freaking scream. And the funny thing about it is that I've always loved the front wheel drive stuff, mainly because that was what was becoming, or that was where the prevailing winds, I should say, were kind of taking performance. All these cars were lightweight and it didn't take a whole lot of power to make them quick, but you could make a lot of power, especially with that 2.2 liter Dodge motor. Next thing you knew, there were 13-second 2.2 liter turbo Daytonas, for example, in a world and at a time when a 14-second car was considered to be pretty fast, and a 13-second car would put you in Corvette territory, supercar territory for some guys. Mike's asking, any tips for a rear-wheel drive newbie in snowy weather? My Challenger is really nice, and the most I want to do in the spring is detail the paint and not do body work, for sure. Traction control is going to be your new best friend. Throttle control is going to be what you will be practicing. There's really not a tip that I can give you that's not going to sound like fairly generic, common sense type stuff. A good snow tire or all-season tire will be a must. Check your tire pressures and also make sure that your tread wear depth is looking good for the conditions you'll be running in. What is this spam stuff? It's so funny. Oh my God, that's too funny. Sorry, I just glanced down and saw, I don't know. Anyway, slowly going fast. Oh, funny you say that because I own and built a K24 Integra. Honda is actually what got me in the game. So funny you should mention that. So what got me into electronic tuning was an Integra drag race car. It was this was using old tuning technology. Long story short, it was using Apex. And the guy had brought his car to the dynos, a dyno operator at the time, and asked to tune and dyno this car. And I was like, yeah, I've never seen something like that. Dude, I'll give you free dyno time to show me what's up. So he proceeded to kind of walk me through Apex on this Integra motor. Actually, it was an Integra motor CRX, I think. Anyway, it was just a shell. Slicks in the front, skinnies in the back, and it made 650 horsepower to the front tires, a turbo setup. And this is on a dyno jet 248, so an inertia style dyno jet. One of the things about it that was so interesting was the curve didn't look like a normal curve. It just went nothing, everything, you know. And anyway, yeah, so that's kind of what got me into it as well. Was I was it just basically dynoing stuff, and the CalCon, CalEdit stuff really hadn't hit yet, and wasn't near as sophisticated as it is now. Saying looks like bots are Mopar fans too. Yeah, hooker bots love them some Mopar. That is too funny. Like I'm trying to like understand the wingdings or whatever these things, the emojis. Like, what's the sweating face? Like, did it like eat a jalapeno or something? It's like, are the thumbs, did they just like rain? Are those farmers or something? And it's like the checks. It's like, it's just a check mark. It's like, it's all right. Scratches an itch. How am I supposed to, like, it's just good enough. It's like, porn, Like, it'll get you there, but, The thumbs up shit. Like, what the hell? Like, that's good porn. Like, how am I supposed to translate that? Like, I get the lips thing, but I don't know. The I just ate a jalapeno. Like, the last thing I'm thinking about, I don't want to touch any part of giblets if I got jalapeno problems. You see where that could be a problem? I mean, I'd rather literally have ants in my pants than grab kibbles and bits if you've been eating peppers. And it looks like the peppers guy, I don't know. So it's not, there's the thumbs up doesn't do me any good at that point. It's like, no, bad idea. Bad porn. I do not need jalapeno porn on my live chat. And what's with the very first one? It's all like in love with. It's like, gotta give me some of that. Oh my God, it's so hot. I love this. What? None of the emojis make any sense. Like, I'm trying to make sense of this, and the hieroglyphics just aren't checking out because it's all that and then a check mark. Like, you did good. Like, is that a grade? Am I being graded on this? But the other thing is like the rain. Like, does that mean there's good chances for rain? And that's good? Like, and the thing is, they like the first one's a check mark, the last one's in with the thumbs up. I'm just trying to figure. Oh wait, here we go. Here's some more. Ooh, there's an envelope. I can't translate. Oh, okay. So this one actually makes sense. So that he eats a jalapeno, and he's sweating, but somebody he loves gave him some water, and that's good, and now he's happy. So that one actually makes sense, but it has nothing to do with porn. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm old. I don't understand some of that stuff. Hillboat said, it's learning. Maybe it is. Slowly saying the hot faces when girls say are hot and bothered. Well, I mean, if I eat like habanero peppers, I'm hot and I'm bothered by that too. If you've never had a jalapeno pepper, by the way, it looks like a little baby bell pepper. I have a really kind of a funny story with this. It's back when I was a bartender at kind of a rough bar in Central Texas. Anyway, we had a guy, he grew them, and I didn't know what habanero, I didn't have any idea what it was. I just knew I liked peppers. We used to make like stuffed peppers and stuff. I saw this thing, I thought it was like a baby bell pepper, and I was like, damn, you know what I could do is I could make the meat, kind of make everything, the stuffing at the house, bring all that with me, stuff these baby bell peppers, and we could have them at the bar, you know, like bar food type thing. So I went to take a bite of this thing, and I ate it like you would eat a small bell pepper. We're talking a habanero pepper. So anyway, I set my mouth into a place it's never been. I'm cracking beers behind the thing, just literally downing beers as fast as I could to try to wash this stuff out of my face. Anyway, that's all I see when I see that. It's just, I remember that because it was bad. It's learning. I caught that. Hemis saying, hi, B, I just got here and wanted to say happy 2022. Happy 2020 you too, buddy. Look through the new Direct Connection catalog, and it ain't nothing like the vintage Direct Connection. At least they are offering red-eye driveline hardware for the Hellcat guys, which is true. By the way, here's what a 1984 Direct Connection Bible looks like. That's their words. 500 pages of knowledge in this. This would be like what the original Direct Connection book would look like. That's from 1974. So in case you guys have never seen it. Hemi said, also, I'm looking forward to seeing who the power brokers are and if it's really worth ordering through them. So here's the thing. The initial rollout for the power brokers, I don't think when is planned, fellas. And the reason why I say that, look, I know of one power broker in Houston that's going to be Helfman Dodge, but there's, at least I was told, there was two other dealerships that were going to be power brokers. One of them is a sponsor of the drag strip here, and I would have thought that would have been a shoe-in. I'm still shocked that they didn't get it. And another one, anyway, we were supposed to have another one, Mac Hike. So you had Bayway and Mac Hike along with Helfman were going to be power brokers. Now it's just going to be Helfman down here. But they haven't released the names, and I don't know when they're going to release or what the date would be when they actually release it. So I don't know. I don't get it. And the other thing is, what is it going to look like in terms of ordering parts? Can you only order parts through a power broker? If I have parts numbers, can I order those parts through other dealers? In other words, if I have a really strong relationship or an account with another, well, if I have a relationship, I have the account with another dealer, can I still get the parts the same way I could get the lights out kit for the rear seat delete or something along those lines, if that makes any sense? I don't know. Gary's asking, would the Red Eye or Hellcat half shafts be a good upgrade for a manual scat? Also a drive shaft, manual one, of course. So the drive shaft, not so much. The half shafts, also not so much. I really wouldn't worry too much about that. I know of guys that have had manual scats that have beat them to death, and the last thing they ever had to worry about was half shafts and drive shafts. So in your application, I would say probably not necessary. If If you were an automatic, that would maybe be a different story, but even then you wouldn't be able to use the drive shaft because of transmission length, and the half shafts would be overkill for anything on an NA car. You got to remember the NA stuff is still pretty dadgum beefy. As a matter of fact, I don't know that their half shafts are much different than stock Hellcat 262 gear stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it at all. In your application, leave the stock stuff alone, you will be just fine. And to be honest, it would be one of those situations where, for one, the half shafts would definitely work. The drive shaft I'm a little bit foggy on, but the half shafts I know would work because we use Scat Pack rear differentials in our Hellcats, and if you need to upgrade to, say, red eye half shafts, they bolt right in. There's just the matter of actually putting the thing together. So Gary's saying good deal. Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Like I said, I've seen guys launching the living piss out of those things and not really having any issues. At that point, it's a little bit more to do with making sure that your clutch restrictor mod has been done, and you'll be looking more at clutch stuff than you would driveline further down south of that thing. I would probably venture to say. But with that, guys, we are coming up on 2 hours, and I got to check out because I got to be up in the morning. So hopefully that kind of shed some light for you folks. If you weren't familiar, this stuff happened way before your time. I get that 100%. I wanted to bring it to you again. This is what an original Mopar direct connection catalog looked like. Kind of looks like about the size of a magazine. Some good stuff in here, some specifications, but primarily just a reference guide more than anything else, with part numbers to kind of steer you in the right direction. Fast forward 10 years and it evolves into a 500-page textbook on how to build your insert hot rod Mopar engine. Basically how to build that, engine math, cam specs, tuning specs, carburetor tuning, timing curve, the whole bit outlined directly for you in that now textbook from Direct Connection. Really cool stuff, and again, just wanted to bring that to you. I can go over any of this stuff whenever you want. If you have any more specific questions, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to answer those questions via the book. Again, a lot of really cool stuff in there, but wanted to bring you guys those horsepower figures, which I thought y'all like also. Kind of goes in lockstep with what I've been saying for the longest time. But anyway, but with that, guys, want to thank each and every one of y'all for hanging out with me. Love each and every one of y'all. Would not do this without you. Thank you guys very much for the support on the channel. Means more to me than you will ever know. And with that, if you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep your shiny side up. Ray, Missy, love you, brother. And y'all have a fantastic 2022. Again, Happy New Year. Can't wait to hear about all your successes as they come your way. Y'all have a great one. We'll catch you on the next one. That's a wrap, idiots.